So let me take this opportunity to welcome you to this particular class. I wish your weekend has been okay. Now today we are looking at topic 2, issues and crisis communication. Bearing in mind, last week we looked at public relations and management discipline, and we looked at various definitions of public relations and why public relations is a management discipline. We also looked at the functions of a PR manager, qualities of a PR manager. We also looked at types of images, the mirror image, the current image, the multiple image, and corporate image, and also all those types of images. Then from there, I gave some further reading material on public relations and PR and public relations department, PR and also internal public relations and also external public relations and departments and consultancies. Now, having said that, allow me to take this to start my class on what we call issues and crisis communication. So the first thing we are going to look at the intended learning outcomes. That Elizabeth, after this class, you must be able to define issues. You must be able to define issues. We are also going to look at types of issues because there are several. We're also going to look at 5 stages of issues management. We will also define what a crisis is, and then we are going to look at the life cycle of the issues life cycle, because it goes through a life cycle. Because it's an issue, then it escalates, then it becomes a crisis, and it has a life cycle. We are going to look at that and actually in details. Also, we are going to look at crisis communication and how you are supposed to communicate as a PR practitioner, especially during a crisis situation. We're also going to look at crisis communication plan. How does it look like? Then we're also going to look at the role of media in a crisis. Some organizations, when they're in a crisis, they tend to even instruct the soldiers at the gate or the security guys at the gate. They tell them that when you see the media coming, just make sure that they don't come. Chase them, tell them to go far from this company. You don't need them. That one is very wrong, because the media will always look at a way in which they can get information. And some of the ways it can get information is through the eyewitnesses. The eyewitnesses may give information regarding a crisis or regarding a crisis or an issue in your organization. And whatever they say might not be based on fact. So the best thing that you can do to control rumors and information that may tarnish your organization further, the image of your organization further, is to allow the media to come in. You straighten out issues so that even if they hear rumors from people, those rumors are not true. The truth is what you have told them. Now, so it is important to treat the media properly and very well, and even to give them full information of what happened or what happens in a crisis. Now, we're also going to look at crisis public relations strategy, the strategy that you're supposed to use as a PR practitioner. So then we move to what we call issue. What is an issue? You have heard this particular term. You've heard people saying that guy has an issue with you. You have heard somebody saying it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. You've heard people talking about issues. Now, today, I want you to understand from this point that when you talk about an issue, according to Heath 1997, it's a strategic, commercial, reputation risks that have the potential to escalate into a crisis if not resolved. These are problems that requires intervention over a period of time. Now, issues are things that need to be dealt with. But if you don't deal with them, they escalate and becomes crisis. Like the Swahili says that usipoziba ufa utajenga ukuta. That if you don't deal with a crack on the wall, you will end up rebuilding a new wall. So issues are like cracks on the walls. So if you don't deal with those cracks on the wall or that crack on the wall, you may end up building a whole wall. So building a whole wall simply means that you are now facing a crisis. Issues are so many. For example, an issue for those who are doing diploma in hospitality management, an issue can be clean water, the source of water, where we are getting the water. And it becomes an issue and you're not able to deal with that particular issue. You use that water to prepare food for the customers. I'm assuming we are in a hotel or it's a hotel industry. You use that water, you clean food, you clean utensils using that dirty water. You also do what else? You wash your clothes using that dirty water. Sometimes you even give your clients that dirty water to drink. Dirty water, I mean untreated water. Now, when you prepare water, when you prepare food using unclean water, chances are people may get waterborne diseases like cholera or things like typhoid and many other waterborne diseases. And this one may also bring about what we call a crisis. Suppose a company comes and books what we call a table for their client, or even a room for their clients. Maybe they have like 50 clients. So these 50 people comes in, they eat your food, and then all of a sudden, you hear of news that out of 50 people from a certain company that came and ate your food, already 49 or 46, they are already hospitalized because your food was not clean. Then it tarnishes your organization. Or maybe you had taken like 10 or even 100 years to build your reputation. So it destroys your reputation completely. Now that issue you never dealt with when it was not serious. Now that issue has become a crisis. Another thing is when you talk about employees. Sometimes in an organization you find that employee salaries are delayed, and it becomes an issue. You have not paid your employee salary this month, next month, or for the past 6 months. Now, in these employees, it's an issue. You are not paying them even on time. So it becomes a crisis when these employees decide now we are going on strike. And maybe you have a very good name outside there. People have a very good, they have a very good, they think outside, people think from outside that you are that company that everyone would want to work for or to work in, only to come and find your employees carrying placards and demonstrating and saying haki yetu. It feels so bad. It tarnishes the image of the organization totally. And now that one you start now dealing with crisis of rebuilding your image, which has already been destroyed within a few minutes or a few hours. So we have already understood what an issue is. So then we have types of issues. Number one, we have external issues. External issues, they are not specific to an organization. They may be policy or political changes that affect an organization. Like, for example, we have the government coming up with new policies, new tax policies, new tax policies, new laws, new regulations. Those ones, we call them external issues. So an organization must take a position for policy. The internal policies developed by an organization must be in tandem with the external policy. For example, if you're an organization, you have your own rules. Your own rules or your own laws must be able to go hand in hand with government laws, because if they contradict, then you'll find yourself having an issue there to deal with. So organization must change or adapt towards new policy changes. There are new policy every now and then. New laws are coming up every now and then. So as a manager or as a CEO of that particular organization, what you're supposed to do is to ensure that you adapt yourself or you come up with laws that are in line with the external policy, the external laws that are being made for the companies to survive. External issues, we can say again, can be met with two responses: win the argument, pointing out your case, or change, adhere to the policy or regulation. Recently, we heard the president talking about a new tax policy. Already that new tax policy, somebody has come up, he has said that has gone to court. Do what? Bar that, or to actually to defend himself why we should not be able to adhere to that new law policy, or why that new law policy is not good. Somebody has already gone to court. So it is either you win the argument, pointing out your case, or you change, adopt a particular new policy. So if you feel it is not fair, you go to court, or to come up with a committee that will argue out the point why it is not fair for that new policy the government has. It needs you to adapt or to adopt. And characteristics of an external policy or an external issue, it usually emerges from outside. It doesn't emerge from inside the organization. It comes from outside. Number two, it is not specific to an organization, to one organization. For example, when you talk about new tax policy, it cuts across all the organization. When you talk about new housing levy, it affects all the employees in all organizations that operate in Kenya. So it is not specific to one organization. It cuts across several organizations, even all organizations. Number three, plays out over time. There may be a full resolution. We may not find a full resolution. But four, it is deep-seated and it is difficult to tackle. Look at the issue about the new housing levy. It has become so difficult to tackle, and it is deep-seated. It's been difficult to tackle. People have gone to court, has tabled the matter to court, but still nothing has happened. And lastly, we can say that almost all the time are political. Almost all the time, external issues are political. That is public policy or regulatory outcomes that affect operations of an organization. This one is very true. Like new tax policies. All those things are political. All those things, they come from the government, political. So most of the external issues come from the government. Types of issues, number two, is what we call internal issues. Internal issue, they are related to the performance of an organization. Anything that is related to the performance of an organization or related to the organization itself, they are internal issues. So they arise from positive or negative developments an organization is in. For example, a very good example of what we call internal issues are corruption. Corruption is an issue, even in Kenya. the government is not able to tackle this particular issue very well. This issue has even gone to an extent that money is being embezzled by politicians, by people in the government. But the government is not able to deal with this issue, becoming like a crisis. Like the way we are in this particular country, things are, when you look at the money that has been embezzled by politicians who are there before, and even those who are here, realize that money has been stolen. The point that Kenya is in a crisis, and is in a crisis, we're talking about debts. A lot of debt needs to be paid. How did it come about? It's about corruption, embezzlement of public fund, and so much, and so on and so forth. Also, product failure is an internal issue. You come up with a product, and that product was supposed to be, was supposed to do as to do, but to solve a certain problem, to make things better than they were before, and that product fails. That's an internal issue. Supply chain issues. For example, you are not able to deliver your products and services to a certain place on time. It's an internal issue. Massive layoffs. People are laid off from a company. That's an internal issue. It's not an external issue. And the next stage, is it the next stage? We have internal issues. The internal issues, we go to stages of issues management. Stages of issues management. Now, we have number one is what we call horizon scanning. I hope I'm not moving very fast. We have 5 stages of issues management. And when you talk about issues management, number one is horizon scanning. Horizon scanning meaning what? It means that if you work in an organization, it is good that you point out things that can, the issues that can escalate and become crisis. For example, you may decide to go through the organization. You may realize that this organization is very big, but we do not have firefighting equipment, such that in case of fire, we may not be able to do what? Fight that fire. So that is a potential issue. It's a potential crisis. It's an issue, it's a potential crisis. You may come and realize that water is a crisis. I mean, it's an issue. The water that we are getting from our suppliers or from the air from our suppliers is not clean. A point, there is mixing with what we call the sewer waste. So the water that we are receiving is not clean. This might become a crisis. This is the water that employees are drinking. This is the water that employees are using to do what? To cook food or to prepare food for their staff. It might become a crisis. That's an issue. Another issue can be, say, for example, delay of paying salaries to our employees. We are not paying our employees their salaries on time. That's a potential issue which needs to be dealt with. A potential issue might also be the internet. The internet, you have what we call internet downtime every now and then. And maybe majorly the work that you do depends on the internet. That one can make you lose a lot of money. Can make you lose a lot of money. The internet, when you have unstable internet, is an issue. So when you do horizon scanning, you will be able to come up with those issues that can escalate and become crisis. And then what you do, number two, that you prioritize those issues. You identify those crises. Classify key issues into groups. Example. So Heath, 1997, argued that monitoring should occur only after the issue meets three criteria. Monitoring should occur only after the issue meets three criteria. Number one, pay attention to those that have the potential of gaining a lot of public interest. For example, fire. Fire is one of that potential crisis or issue that if in case there is a crisis, it will gain a lot of public interest. Another thing is that strike, when employees goes on strike, they are saying that we come from company XYZ, which has got a very good reputation outside there. That one will pay a lot of attention to it will create a lot of attention outside there. But two, you must be able to outline those that offer quantifiable threat or opportunity in terms of organization's market or operations. And three, championed by a group or institution with actual or potential influence. You need to identify those crises, identify them, or identify those issues. Number three, prioritization. Prioritization simply means list the most important first and deal with it, then up to the least important. Those that needs, those that you know very well, that this one can wait, let it be the least one. So which issues need immediate attention? You need to do that. Determine which issue demand organizational response, and the allocation of resources demands detailed analysis. So you need to prioritize. You need to ask yourself the following questions. How likely the issue going to affect the organization? How likely? How much impact will the issue have? So there are some issues that will not even have impact. For example, issues that may spread rapidly through the internet will be given more priority. Issues. When customers complain so much about your organization, sometime I wanted to buy something. I wanted to buy a car battery. Yeah? My car battery went flat. I wanted to buy a car battery. I decided to enter into one of the social media of one battery company. And when I saw the comment, I really wanted to buy that car battery. When I saw the comment, clients have complained. Some are saying that when they bought the car battery and they were given a warranty for 1 year, those people did not do anything. They did not change the battery. They took very long time actually respond to their issues. I decided I'm not going to buy that. But when you see it on TV, the advert that runs on TV concerning that particular car, that particular organization, or that particular battery manufacturers, the advert is superb, good, very clean, good. You can even think of buying battery the following day. So it is good to deal with those issues that spread in the internet, that may spread rapidly through the internet. Give them more priority, because the internet thing, it spread like bushfire. Somebody in US will know what you're going through. It's just something that has just happened right now. People across the world can know within a twinkling of an eye what has affected or what has happened in a particular country, a particular organization. The internet, aware of the internet, is very strong, and it must be issues that may spread through the internet should be given more priority. Stage number 4, strategy and implementation. Number one, we are saying how to mitigate the issue. How do you mitigate the issue? Get a strategy to counter those issues, deal with those issues, which includes prediction. You can predict. In case of fire, friend, we don't have firefighting equipment, we are going to find ourselves in a very big trouble. Or you say you predict there is heavy rains, there are heavy rains. Where we are close to what we call a river. So in case this river overflows, it is going to overflow with our company or some employees from our company. So once you do prediction, prevention, you prevent yourself. Prevent yourself either moving to places where the water, in case there is what we call water outburst, there is overflow, then we are not going to do what? To be carried by the waters. And then you come up with what we call resolution tactic. So the scanning, monitoring, prioritization, and strategic decision-making steps have no value unless action is taken towards achieving specific and measurable objectives. They have no value unless you take action. Unless you realize that in case of fire, this building is going to be it's going to burn to ashes. Once you realize that, you take action. Make sure that there are firefighting equipment everywhere. An issue again can be power surge. You know very well you don't have equipment that prevent power surge. So when we have power surge, it may come and burn all the equipment, expensive equipment, including your generators. So that is another thing. Evaluation. After doing that, we come to evaluation. The steps involved in evaluating the success of an issue management initiatives will vary as much as the issue themselves. Not all issues will take the same steps. There are issues that will take longer steps than others. Issues that will take very little time compared to others. The first and the most crucial step in evaluation is setting clear and measurable objectives. Clear and measurable objectives. That is what we are saying. So, definition of a crisis. I hope we have understood what an issue is before we go to crisis. Any question? Those who have just joined us, is there any question? Alonso, any question? So, definition of a crisis. In Chinese language, the word crisis is composed of two characters, danger and opportunity. We talk about a crisis, there are people who will be able to do what? Get an opportunity, while there is that person who is going to be in a very dangerous situation. For example, collapse building. People will get an opportunity. Those people who use caterpillars to get opportunity to do what? Be given some job to try and do what? And evacuate. To evacuate, to excavate those materials. You know, when a building collapses, there are those materials that are let loose. So to excavate, try and save people. Those people will get an opportunity to do what? Do that work. While the organization itself will be facing, will be going at a loss. So it is a significant threat to operations that can have negative consequences if not handled properly. it is a significant threat to operation. So the normal operations, the way an organization operates normally, that time it is not operating. For example, when hackers hack the systems of the organization, that means it has shut, the hackers have made the organization not operate. Nothing is going on. For example, the heavy rains that we had just the other day, those were crises. People who are not even going to work. Huh? People who are not even going to work. So if not handled properly, it can have very negative consequences. Very negative consequences. So specific, and these are just definition, it's a specific, unexpected, and unroutine organizational-based event or series of events which creates high level of uncertainty, a threat or perceived threat to an organization's high priority goals. That's according to Seeger, Silno, and Alma, 1998. Then we also have Fan Banks, 1996, a major occurrence with a potentially negative outcome affecting organization as well as its publics. Last week we looked at publics of public relations, and this one includes who? We talked about the community, we talked about the media, we talked about potential employees, we talked about employees, we talked about unions, we talked about manufacturers, manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers. We talked about opinion leaders, and we talked about the media. All these people are what we call publics of public relations. So if you see that it is a major occurrence affecting the publics of public relations, including the community, including the customers, including the potential employees, including the government, then that one is a crisis. That one is a crisis because it has affected almost everybody. We continue. Types of crisis. We have financial crisis, we have personnel crisis. Financial crisis, it occurs when the business loses value in its assets and the company cannot afford to pay off its debts. We have heard of companies that were not able to pay their debts. Example, the Kemsa debt crisis that occurred during COVID-19. They could not pay suppliers 6 billion shillings. That one is in the public domain. We also have personnel crisis. It occurs when an employee or individual who is associated with the company is involved in unethical or illegal misconduct, like corruption. That's a personnel crisis. You hear the CEO of company XYZ was among the people who were involved in drug smuggling, something like that. That one is a personnel crisis. We also have organizational crisis. These are situations when the company has significantly wronged its consumers or employees. For example, health workers strike due to lack of proper COVID-19 equipment due to misappropriation of funds. This one we were able to see it in Kenya. Workers going on strike when there was COVID. And these workers, they demanded that they should be given proper working equipment. Because you can imagine a worker going to work or to attend to COVID-19 patients, and he has no protective gears. That's why they decided, let us go on strike. Otherwise, all of us, the doctors, we are going to die. We also have technological crisis. Technological crisis, saying that this is when technology crashes, or when hackers hack into organizations' website. Yes, they steal funds, they transfer funds, they steal information from their company's website. It can also be a result of, for example, when maybe, for example, the system crashes down completely. Find that we cannot communicate, we cannot do anything. For example, imagine a bank that is operating worldwide. If their system crashes, nothing goes on. You cannot withdraw funds, you cannot transfer anything, you cannot communicate to the outside world, you cannot do anything. It's a crisis. So within a day, you will lose a lot of money and a lot of customers. That's what we call technological crisis. Or your systems can be easily hacked by hackers. So when hackers hacks your system, they can transfer some amount of money to other account and you cannot even trace. That one is a technological crisis. Then we also have natural crises. These are unexpected or uncontrollable or uncontrolled natural disasters. For example, COVID-19, the hunger crisis, 2021. The other day we had what we call floods, heavy rains, floods. These ones are called natural crises. This one, they just occur. Hunger is a natural crisis. Any question up to that point? Any question? So then we have talked about the natural crisis. So the natural crisis. Unless there is a question, moving on to what we call issues life cycle. I want you to look at that diagram very well. We have intensity here and we have time here. Intensity is how heavy, how strong something is. And time tells you that with time, intensity goes up and it gets to a point, it goes down. Now, I want us to explain this life cycle thing. I want to explain it. Just give me a minute. Now, I want you to look at that. Have intensity here, we have time here. We have intensity here and time here. Now, those are stages. Those are stages. I'm going to explain each and every stage. Now, you look at that particular diagram, you can see the potential what? The potential stage up there. Now, potential stage, this is a stage that consists of a recognized phenomenon, a recognized thing that could develop into a problem. Example, let me just use the example of what we call COVID-19. When COVID-19 was first discovered in Wuhan, China, it was still in its potential stage. It could be recognized that it could develop into a problem. Maybe the first few people when they were taken to hospital, it was discovered that first or 2 or 3 people, it was discovered that it was that serious. Now this one involves horizon scanning. Remember we have talked about horizon scanning. It involves identifying any risk and risk assessment. So at this particular stage, which is known as a potential stage, an issue has not gained public attention. Nobody knows, it's just there. It's just an issue. Just like when you go to your workplace and you find people sneezing, coughing, and kidogo kidogo, another one starts coughing. Like that. And then you realize, 5 people, 10 people, 20. See now, then we go to what we call the emerging stage. Now, the emerging stage, the intensity of the issue start rising up. The stakeholders are engaged and measures they are put in place. Like it was a cough. 3 people started coughing, 4 people. You see, it is the 5th person. You start now coming up with measures put in place to prevent that issue from becoming a full-blown crisis. Imagine everybody is coughing, hospitalize all of them, and the company will end up being closed down. But at this stage, most of the stakeholders are aware of the issue. It could attract attention of the media coverage. So that is the emerging stage. Look at our diagram. We go to stage number 3, which is called current stage. The issue, how the crisis is coming up full-blown, the current stage. The current stage, we are saying, the issue at this stage has matured. You see, in first COVID-19 in China, they got it around 2019 October, November there. October, November, December. So the first case of COVID-19 was first reported in Kenya around March 2020. Already in China, things had become very serious. Some of them had started coming to Kenya. And that is now, it was in now the current stage. The issue at that stage or at this stage has matured. It is now displaying its full potential impact upon the organization. The public, the key influencers, and others recognize the importance of the issue, and they place what we call measures on governmental bodies. They place measures on agencies. The moment we realize that COVID-19 has affected many people, we started guarding our borders. We started now becoming serious about who is coming from China, so that this COVID-19 not get Kenya to Kenyans. So the government was involved and it introduced formal constraints, deter or change the behavior of that particular disease. Then look at point number 4. Point number 4, we have, or stage number 4, we have crisis stage. Now here things have become out of hand. Remember the first time we reported in Kenya, the COVID-19, that COVID-19 now is here with us. First heard that 1 person, then 2 people, then 5 people, then 10 people, then 20 people, then 100, then 300, then 1,000, then 2,000, like that. Numbers started multiplying like no one's business. So the crisis stage, the issue finally reaches a formal institution that has authority to impose formal constraints. This time when COVID-19 was at the crisis stage, hospitals were full of patients. There was no oxygen. Some people even died when they were moving from one hospital to the other looking for oxygen. This one was everywhere across the world. Things were like that. So the organization's option have decreased. It must set policy or strategy in response to this particular crisis. Then move to point number 5 or stage number 5, which is known as dormant stage. Now the crisis, when the crisis When the issue runs its full course, it reaches this particular stage, which is known as the dormant stage. The organization now focuses on recovery and rebuilding trust and reputation with the public. How things are now coming to normal. Just like the floods that we had the other day, floods, the very heavy rains we had the other day. What happened to them? The rains. People died because of the rain and so on and so forth. Things were put into, things started changing, and rain started receiving very little rains and so on and so forth. So we can see there we talked about potential stage. All these things I've explained. I've also explained about current stage. I've also explained about the crisis stage. I've explained about the dormant stage, what is expected. And I've also explained about the dormant stage. The dormant stage, we have said, is that particular stage when the issue now has done the full course and things now have started coming back to normal. Now the organization or a country start now focusing on recovering and rebuilding trust and reputation with its publics. Now, let's look at this particular topic. Let's go to crisis communication. Crisis communication is a form of communication, or crisis communication is a form of strategic communication that can lessen negative effect of a crisis. For example, during COVID-19, we had crisis communication. You remember our CS, Cabinet Secretary for Health, kept on telling us what we are supposed to do. Remember those words that he used to say, that make sure you sanitize your hands every now and then. Make sure that you do what you maintain social distance. Make sure that you put on mask. Make sure that you maintain 1.5 distance. Those things. He kept saying, take care of yourself. If you cannot do this, this will happen. He kept on giving you even the information. He kept on giving information. Every day they would tell you how many people have tested positive, how many people have tested negative. That is crisis communication. You are communicating to you, tell you how to behave, because there was already what we call a crisis, how to deal with the crisis. We were giving information and so on and so forth. So again, also saying this is the dialogue between the organization and its public prior, during, and after negative occurrence. Prior, during, before a crisis, after a crisis, before, during, and after a crisis. Then we can also define it as dissemination of information by an organization to address a crisis that impacts customer and organization's reputation. It is simply what we call strategic communication. This is not just any communication, it is communication, the customer, the public, on how during a crisis, after a crisis, and before a crisis. Before COVID-19 came, government was talking to us, was telling us that there is no cause for alarm. Then kidogo kidogo, boom, we had COVID-19 with us. So stages of crisis communication, number one, we have pre-crisis. Pre-crisis stage or in pre-crisis communication, or in pre-crisis, crisis communication revolves around collecting information about the crisis risks, making decisions about how to manage potential crises, training people who will be involved in the crisis management process. The training include what? The training includes crisis team members, crisis spokesperson, and any individual who will help with the response. So pre-crisis is before crisis, before COVID-19, before the flood. A good example is the heavy rains that we received just the other day, that we saw riverbanks becoming full to a point that people were carried by waters and people died, by the way. But the weatherman had already predicted. He predicted and said that we will be receiving heavy rains during this period. And the government was to do what? To make sure that the drainage systems were properly done, that in case this heavy rain comes, we will have proper drainage. The government did not do that. So what happened? We went into what we call crisis. Crisis is when everything is out of hand. People are dying because of heavy rains. Animals are being carried by waters. People have nowhere to sleep. They are sleeping in schools. People have lost their loved ones, and so on and so forth. So what happened? We went into a crisis. Crisis communication includes what? It includes collection and processing of information, crisis team decision making, along with creation and dissemination of what? Dissemination of crisis messages to people outside of the team. And we go to what we call post-crisis. Post-crisis, crisis has already happened. Now we are asking ourselves, so post-crisis involves dissecting the crisis management effort, communicating necessary changes to individuals, and providing follow-up crisis messages as needed. The organization needs to release updates on recovery, what has been recovery process, corrective actions, and investigation of the crisis. That's what is supposed to be done, because already crisis has happened. So give us the report. What did it do? How many people lost their lives? How many people died? How many relatives are not? Such kind of things. How many people were displaced by the floods, and so on and so forth. So communication crisis plan, this one I've given enough notes on the notes that I'm going to release. Crisis communication plan, decide on overarching objectives, define your target audiences, choose your key messages, and then select the right channel of communication. It's as simple as that. I'm going to give notes on that. Don't worry about it. Then we go to what we call 5 C's of effective crisis communication. Number 1 is what we call clarity. When you're communicating during crisis, be clear about your message. I like the way Mutahi Kagwe used to speak to us. He used to tell us, wash your hands daily. Maintain 1.5 distance. Wear your mask every day. Avoid, Avoid holding hands and all those things. So be clear about your message and the information you wish to communicate. The issue should be explained clearly, the company's position and actions clarified. Like you're told, wear your mask. That is an action that you're supposed to take. Number two, credibility. Ensure that all the information you share is factual, truthful, and you have gathered all the facts about the crisis. Mutahi Kagwe was communicating during COVID-19. Why did they choose Minister for Health? Because he's a credible source who will believe what he says. He did not take any Tom, Dick, and Harry to talk to us. He took the cabinet secretary or the Minister for Health. Number three, compassion. When you are communicating, communicate with compassion, with love. I remember very well he used to say, let us protect our loved ones. When you go home, make sure that you maintain social distance. It doesn't matter whether it is your cousin, it doesn't matter whether it is your brother, don't hold hands, don't do what? Make sure that you wear masks. Because it is those your loved ones that may spread this particular COVID-19. Consistency. Mutahi Kagwe was there consistently. Every day there was media briefing about how many people have tested positive, how many people have died, how many people have tested negative, and so on and so forth. And he kept on repeating the same rules, maintain social distance, blah, 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 all those things. There must be consistency. So then, what is the purpose of media during a crisis? Purpose of media during a crisis is that it gives the opportunity for organizations to act in a proactive manner rather than reactive manner. Number two, it creates a greater chance of control of messages, such that if you hear what we call rumors from outside, you will not believe it. You will only believe what the PR practitioner has told you or what the organization has said to his spokesman. During that time, you are able as a spokesperson in a media to have the ability to correct misinformation. The media personnel may come and say, we have heard this fire was caused by electric fault. Tell them no, it was not an electric fault. It was what we call, it was caused by what we call, maybe for example, a leakage, gas leakage. You are able to correct misinformation, and you are able to retain control of the situation. How? People are giving information that is not true, others are giving hearsays, you are able to control that situation. Whatever you tell the media personnel, if they go to their studio, that is what they will project. That's what they will broadcast. Not listen to those other people. That marks the end. I've given what we call further reading. Further reading, I'm going to provide notes. You are supposed to read on elements of crisis public, elements of a crisis public relations strategy. What should it contain? I've given notes on that. You don't have to worry about any question.